While I may not understand the hype surrounding the Gen 1 Pokemon games, I can at least say I respect them for the foundations that they laid out. And hey, as much as I criticise them, I still think they're perfectly playable games. I just think that later entries in the series are a lot better. Pokemon Gold and Silver was teased ever since the first episode of the anime where Ash encountered Ho-Oh. Nowadays the franchise does this stuff all the time with its movies. It's how I found out about Lucario as a kid. Thanks to the internet, marketing strategies like these have kind of lost their touch, but at the time this sparked many fan theories and much speculation about what this could mean for the future of Pokemon. The fact that there could have been more than the initial 150 Pokemon just waiting to be discovered must have been really exciting for a kid. Fast forward 20 years and we're practically drowning in the fucking things. Pokemon Gold and Silver were actually given a playable teaser. At the time it was called Pokemon 2. It allowed players to see all sorts of new Pokemon, including what would become the grass type starter, Chikorita. After several delays, the game was finally released in the year 2000, and man, did people eat it up. It seems that with most Pokemon players, Gens 1, 2 and 3 are the fan favourites, with each of them having die-hard followings. However, Gen 2 of Pokemon might just be the most well-received game in the series to date, being highly regarded by fans and critics alike. So brace yourselves kids, cause no matter what I say, I'm probably gonna get yelled at. Such is life. For this review I put most of my attention on Pokemon Crystal, as that game is considered to be sort of a deluxe edition of Pokemon Gold and Silver. But enough talk, there's animals to enslay, raised with love and affection. The game starts out once again with Professor Oak greeting you, only this time you get to be either a boy or a girl. Well, that's if you're playing Crystal anyway. You start off in New Bark Town, slightly left of the Kanto region. Yes, this new region known as Johto is actually not that far away from the place you originally lived in. The only thing separating this new region from the old one are some very large mountains. Whole new world my arse. Being serious for a moment though, why the hell did it take so long for them to find out there were more Pokemon to be found? You're telling me that the professors of the Pokemon world didn't think of messaging each other about their findings? Just something that's always bothered me really. So your adventure begins with your mother asking if you remember how to use your Pokegear, a nifty little device that can make phone calls as well as listen to radio. The stupid part is that even if you say you know how to use it already, she'll tell you anyway. Thank you mother, now where is my volcano bake meat? You waltz into Professor Elm's lab where you're given a choice between 3 starter Pokemon. Only if you're smart, you'll know that there's only one option. Yeah, I'm not all that big of a fan of the Gen 2 starters. They're passable, but compared to what we had last game and everything that comes after it, they're honestly not that great. At least, not in my eyes. One thing I do like about them though is that they evolve at completely different times. Which one you pick will determine the difficulty of your adventure. For example, if you choose Cyndaquil, which you should, you'll get his second form by level 14, earlier than Totodile who has to wait until level 18 to evolve into Croconaw, whereas Chikorita evolves at the standard level 16. However, in the latter half of the game the order is flipped. Totodile can reach his final form as early as level 30, while Chikorita and Cyndaquil have to wait until level 32 and 36 respectively. This is an interesting idea and it's a shame that Game Freak hasn't done something like this with future starter Pokemon. Granted, the starters we've been getting since then are some of the best in the series, but it's the thought that counts. As for why I'm not a big fan of these 3, while their stats are decent, I just think that the move pools of the Gen 1 starters are much better. Venusaur for example could use both Poison and Sleep Powder, unlike Meganium who can only learn the former. Charizard can learn both Dragon and Flying type moves, as opposed to Typhlosion, despite the obvious drawback of not being able to withstand getting hit by a pebble. As for Feraligatr, I'm more of a fan of Blastoise because he's an absolute tank. If you like these guys, that's fine. Pokemon's not just about raising Pokemon but the bond you grow over time. That may sound a bit cheesy, but you'll be surprised how attached you get to these things. With over 700 Pokemon, each of us are bound to have our preferred fighting styles. So yes, if I say anything bad in this retrospective about a Pokemon that you like, just note that this is all my opinion. Besides, I like Delibird even though it's shit. Why? Because Santa Claus. Professor Elm tells you to go see Mr. Pokemon who's made a shocking discovery. Pokemon can breed. You can also meet Professor Oak who just hands you a Pokedex as if it's Halloween candy. Pretty creepy. While on the way back you run into a complete ass munch. This is where you're thrusted into your first proper battle. Right off the bat, I want to highlight one thing. they split special into 2 stats. Yeah, so certain Pokemon, e.g. Psychic types, are no longer the equivalent of Pokegods. As a compromise, some Pokemon get a boost to either their special attack or special defense, so it's not like they've been completely crippled. After you beat his Sorry Ash, you make your way back to the lab where you discover that the guy has stolen a Pokemon. And as tradition would have it, the Pokemon that he's stolen is the one that's strongest against yours. You hand the Pokemon egg that you got from Mr. Pokemon to Professor Elm for research. You get given it back later on though. Spoiler alert, it's a Togepi in there. Had this been Gen 4, I probably would have cared. At least this will go well with bacon. Alright, just kidding. Sausages then. From here, the game follows the same basic get the 8 gym badges structure, while occasionally going off the beaten path to do some dirty work. Our first destination is Violet City, where you get to take on the Bellsprout tile to get the TM Flash. Out of all the Pokemon to get their own monument, why a fucking Bellsprout? I mean, Shuckle is clearly more deserving of a tribute. Shortly after, you get to fight Falkner, who has a level 9 Pidgeotto. Is that even legal? Before long, you'll run into Team Rocket in Azalea Town, who has come up with a new diabolical plan, poaching Slowpokes for their tails, because they're worth a lot of money. The NPCs around the town seem pretty disgusted with their behaviour, though I don't think they can take the moral high ground, as Slowpoke tails are actually served up in a restaurant in Kalos. Slowpoke tail. Your next gym leader is Bugsy, who people still haven't found out what its gender is. I, on the other hand, hate this person for sounding a bit too much like a certain bastard of a bobcat. While in Azalea Town, you can also meet Kurt, who can craft you some custom Pokeballs should you give him these things called apricorns. They're harder to find in the original game because most of the time you look in trees, you'll just end up finding berries. But in the remake, it's like 90% apricorns. That said, if you do decide to skip out on these, you aren't missing much. There are some pretty cool ones here, like the Heavy Ball, which increases the chance of capture if the Pokemon is over a certain weight, and the Friend Ball, which automatically sets the captured Pokemon's friendship value to 100. Why would you care about something as inconsequential as that? Well, remember in Gen 1 where certain Pokemon could only evolve through trading? Well, now there's even more special conditions that need to be met. Golbat will evolve into Crobat if he or she loves you enough, and that is why I never got a Crobat, because I'm a dick. You thought just trading your Pokemon was a hassle? Well, I hate to break it to you, but it just got even worse. For example, Scyther will only evolve into Scizor if you give it a metal coat and trade it. I'm not against making you trade your Pokemon in order to get them to evolve, because at the end of the day, Pokemon was always about battling and trading with friends. There are 2 versions for a reason. Disregarding the fact that no one wants to hang out with me anyway because I'm a lonely fuck, getting a rare item and then trading the Pokemon is a little bit too much if you ask me. Ultimately worth it, but still. Remember Eevee, that Pokemon with the 3 unique evolutions? Well, now the greedy bastard's got 2 more. You get Espeon if you max out its friendship in the daytime, and Umbreon during the nighttime. There's also weird ones like Tyrogue, who will only evolve into Hitmonchan at level 20 if his attack stat is higher than his defense, and vice versa if you want to get Hitmonlee. However, he'll evolve into Hitmontop if both stats are equal. We're not at the weirdest evolutions yet, but this should give you some idea of how complex training some Pokemon can be at times. I mentioned that there's also a day and night system now. When you start the game, you'll be asked to set your clock. On your way to Cherry Grove, you mainly fight Sentrets and Pidgeys, but when the sun goes down, Hoot Hoots and Spinarak's will start roaming the tall grass instead. This is a very nice feature. The only issue I have with it is that it will drain your save battery. Yeah, one of the reasons why the older Pokemon games retain their value is not necessarily because we're in short supply, but because finding one with a working save battery is pretty difficult, to put it lightly. This is precisely why I rejoiced when the Gen 1 games were put on the Nintendo eShop for the 3DS, and I can only hope that the same happens with these games. If they haven't been put up already by the time this video goes out. You never know, a man can dream. Making your way to Goldenrod, you'll eventually come across the Pokemon Daycare. This, ladies and gents, is where Pokemon go to have some alone time, if you know what I mean. If you pair 2 Pokemon up in the daycare, one male, one female, depending on if they're compatible or not, they'll produce an egg. If you want to know which Pokemon breed with what, then I suggest looking this stuff up online. But putting 2 Pokemon of the same species together will always result in an egg. But if you really want to produce eggs in quick succession, don't worry, I've got a solution. This is Ditto. Ditto is like a sex machine. It doesn't matter if it's a Pikachu or a Wailord, it will fuck anything that moves. So yes, if you're looking to get copies of Pokemon for your Pokedex, Ditto is your main man. Pokemon breeding will get much more complex in future generations, but for now let's just say when mummy and daddy love each other very much and call it a day. I suppose the first thing you want to do is take on the gym leader Whitney.
But you will soon learn the error of your ways.
Now let's just make one thing clear. Miltank is a shit Pokemon, no questions asked. But with its high defense stat at this point in the game, it's practically god tier. Okay, fine, just burn it to a crisp and it'll eventually roll over and die, right? Not if you use his milk drink, and that's not even counting the free potions all gym leaders get when starting out. Even after you beat her, she still won't give you your badge because she's crying her eyes out. Oh great, now I feel like such a bastard. Well, more than I am anyway. And yet I adore this boss fight for the simple fact that this is one of the only boss fights in the entire series, not counting the Battle Frontier Brains, that actually required me to plan a pretty decent strategy. Because if I'm being truthful here, while I love these games, I think we can all agree that Pokemon is piss easy once you know your stuff. After you've gotten your 3rd gym badge, why not participate in the bug catching contest? This is where you can catch all sorts of bug type Pokemon to compete for the grand prize of the Sunstone. The rarer the Pokemon, the more points you score. I know a lot of players get a bit confused when they lose to a Pokemon that's the exact same as theirs, so allow me to clear up any confusion. While it is true that the rarity of your Pokemon is paramount to winning the contest, there are also other factors to consider. For example, if I caught a Scyther that was level 15 and my opponent caught one that was level 18, they would be the winner, depending on the condition of his or her Pokemon. A level 18 Scyther may be better stat-wise, but just like Pokemon trading cards, if my level 15 Scyther is kept in mint condition, that's going to mean more points in the long run. It's a fun little distraction and a great way to catch some rare bug types, but it's merely that, a distraction. Ecruteak City is where you meet Usain, a legendary beast fanatic with his favourite being Suicune. I hope you'll pardon my French when I say these fuckers can blow me. To go on a quick tangent for a second, Raikou, Suicune and Entei are the first in what's known as roaming legendaries. What does that mean? It means they can't sit fucking still. When you get into battle with them, you'll need to use a move like Mean Look. This will prevent them from escaping, otherwise they'll just bugger off. Even if they're asleep or frozen solid, they'll just soldier on anyway. Legendary Pokemon indeed. There's no easy way to track them down either. You can check where they are in your Pokedex, but that's only if you've encountered them in battle first. They jump around each time you step foot in a new location too, so good luck. This side quest becomes less of a chore in future games, but I really don't care for it here. You can keep your legendary status, thanks. Fortunately, if you're playing Crystal, this job is made a little bit easier as Suicune just fights you like any other Pokemon. Raikou and Entei are still chicken shit though, so it's not that much easier. Moving on to Olivine City. You climb the lighthouse to find a sick Anthros who's still being forced to work day in and day out. Slave labour in Pokemon, people, I'll be damned. And its owner has the audacity to tell you to go get some medicine from Signwood for her sick Pokemon. It's a good thing Signwood City has a gym leader, otherwise I'd do it anyway because I'm obligated to as the hero. But you can bet if I did have my own autonomy, your ass would be in jail. Oh yeah, and this sweet and innocent girl just so happens to be this city's gym leader. In return for helping her, Jasmine empties out all of the underlings in the gym. Much appreciated, Jasmine, but you're still a bitch. Actually, since Jasmine uses one of them, let's talk about the two new types. Dark and Steel. If you recall, only the Bug type was strong against Psychic type Pokemon in Gen 1. Well, not only have Bug types improved since then, Ghost type moves have now been made a thing, and these new types were made specifically to counteract Psychics. Thank God. But how about we pick that plot back up again? You beat the gym leader in Mahogany Town and head over to the Lake of Rage. There you'll find Team Rocket, who are trying to force Magikarps to evolve, with their one success being this red Gyarados, also known as a shiny Pokemon. Oh boy, shiny Pokemon are special variants of Pokemon that can often look really cool, or if you're Pikachu, change absolutely nothing. The catch, however, is that disregarding this one, they are extremely rare. To give you an idea of how hard finding a shiny really is, the probability of you even encountering one in the wild is 1 in 8,192, or 0.0122%. Yes, you did in fact hear me correctly. Half-Life 3 does have a better chance of coming out than you actually finding a shiny Pokemon in the wild. And the sad part is that's probably true. If you ever get a chance to find one, regardless of what it is, catch it. That's all I'm gonna say. So you infiltrate Team Rocket's hideout with Lance, where you find that Team Rocket are basically running around like headless chickens. If you recall in Gen 1, Giovanni abandoned Team Rocket, saying that they're pretty much finished, and honestly that wasn't far from the truth at all. In 3 years they've been spending the majority of their time trying to search for their beloved boss. Their plan extends to taking over the Goldenrod radio tower, but that quickly gets shot down by a 10-year-old boy. Again. To be fair to Team Rocket, I do actually like the fact that they have a motive this time around, other than being your stock bad guy. Your final stop is Blackthorn, where you face off against the Dragon-type gym leader Claire, but it's nothing I can handle. Now give me that badge. I wish it was that easy, but I guess not. After beating her, she deems you not worthy of a badge, and sends you off to take a pop quiz in some cave north of the city. When you pass, her colleagues threaten to take this up with the league champion, and she quickly changes her mind. What a bitch. It's time to head back where the journey began. Surfing right of New Bark Town will take you on Kanto ground. From there you conquer Victory Road and head straight for the Pokemon League. But like last time, before doing so, you're interrupted by your rival. Let's talk about your rival for a second. Silver starts off as nothing more than a schoolyard bully that constantly gets in your way at the most inconvenient of times. Unlike Blue, however, gradually over the course of the game, he starts gaining more respect for you. He also learns the valuable lesson that treating your Pokemon as weapons is not the way to go. Even though it kind of is, let's be honest. One subtle detail that I really like is the fact that his Golbat evolved into Crobat, a Pokemon who, as I stated previously, can only evolve by maxing out its friendship stat. There is something a little bit more interesting about Silver that you might want to know, but I'll leave that for the Heart Gold Soul Silver section of this review. Silver is symbolic for everything I love about this game's story. In Gen 1 I mostly skipped over all of the narrative because there really wasn't any to begin with. Go get the 8 gym badges, beat your skid mark of a rival, and go catch Mewtwo. Bada bing, bada boom, you're done. There's more stuff going on here. Team Rocket actually has a purpose this time around, and your rival is 3-dimensional, no longer a narcissistic douchebag. And the feeling of being in a region filled with myths and legends makes Johto feel more inviting than Kanto will ever be. Gen 1 had the Pokemon Mansion, where you learned that Dittos are actually failed cloning experiments of Mew. That's an example of flavor text that I really like. An example in Gen 2 that I rather like is the story of the Brass Tower. The Brass Tower was meant to act as a home of sorts for the legendary Pokemon Lugia and Ho-Oh. Unfortunately, it got burnt down and Lugia fled to the Whirl Islands. When Ho-Oh returns to the tower, he finds what can only be described as 3 Pokemon, who are trapped in the tower and burned to death. The mystical bird Pokemon revives them, where they're reborn as the 3 legendary beasts, Raikou, Suicune and Entei. For those of you wondering, that's not something I made up. You can find out all this stuff by talking to various NPCs roaming around the world. Pretty cool if you ask me. Anyway, let's get back on track. You beat the Elite Four to find out that the champion is Lance himself. Now here's where I think the twist falls a little flat. If you played the previous game, you already know that Lance is part of the Elite Four. If you haven't, then I guess this is pretty cool, but I still think the rival from Gen 1 is better with the elements of surprise. Lance is defeated and is delighted to witness the rise of a great new champion. Don't worry buddy, one credit sequence later and you'll get your job back. I would start wrapping up this story, but we're not quite done yet. After you beat the game, you get to explore Kanto again, and I'll admit that this is bloody awesome. There are a few areas missing, like the Viridian Forest and the Safari Zone, but my god, I admire the effort here, and we all have this man to thank for it. Mr. Iwata thought the players deserved more from this game, so he spent a good chunk of his time trying to figure out a way he could include Kanto into the game as well. Real talk for a second there guys. Bless you sir, and may you rest in peace. The gaming industry needs more men like you. With a new region comes all new challenges, and by that I mean you get to face all of the gym leaders from the Generation 1 Pokemon games. This is cool, even I can't deny that. 3 years have passed since you've been here, and while it's still the same world, there are some small changes that makes exploring old areas all the more rewarding. Lavender Town is no longer creepypasta material, and is even sporting a new radio tower. As for Cinnabar Island, holy hell, what the fuck happened here? Apparently the entire island was destroyed by molten lava. I guess that's the sad consequence of building your island on an active volcano. Now who's up for some volcano bake meat? It's on me. But what of Red, the main character from Gen 1? Where's he been all these years? Well, upon visiting Pallet Town, you find out that after becoming champion, Red went off to train in Mount Silver and hasn't come back since. Damn, this guy needs a hug. And my god, did he not waste those 3 years. Look how strong his Pikachu is. Why isn't it not evolved into a Raichu? Oh right, that's because it's a stubborn prick and refuses to evolve. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you do a final boss. No monologuing, no long-winded explanations, not even an evil scheme to push the plot along. Just you and, well, you on top of a mountain ready to throw down everything you have for the title of the world's most powerful trainer. Even the build-up here is a stroke of brilliance. You enter a completely pitch-black cave until emerging at the summit, and suddenly, silence. Now what don't I like about Pokemon Generation 2? Well, apart from the roaming legendaries, I do think the roster this time around is a little lackluster. There are only 100 in total, which sounds like a lot, but a good handful of them are just extensions to Generation 1 Pokemon. At the very least, I can say that these are some much needed improvements. Espeon, Scizor, Crobat, all of these are awesome. I'm not sure how I feel about the baby Pokemon though. I guess my disappointment comes from the fact that these are supposed to be all new Pokemon, yet the majority of the time, you're just using the old ones. Familiarity is nice, and I feel that it's something that is very much needed, but it shouldn't be a crutch. Again, I want to stress that there are some bloody good Pokemon in this game, and I'd be a right prick if I was to say the selection here is bad. Skarmory, Ampharos, Tyranitar, you are damn right these are some of my favourites. However, thanks to a good majority of the roster being taken up by Gen 1 upgrades and baby Pokemon, separating the cream from the crop is a lot harder this time around. Furret, Dunsparce, Togepi, Togetic, Misdreavus, Shuckle, all of these in this generation are garbage. Well, perhaps not Shuckle, but then again it depends on how you use it. Hey, despite the fact that I like Delibird, I'm not gonna lie, you shouldn't use it. The difficulty for the Kanto half of the game is more inconsistent than YouTube's copyright ID system. A lot of the trainers here carry Pokemon as low as level 30, meanwhile you're somewhere in the level 40s and 50s. Yet, the Kanto gym leaders are stronger than Lance. Look, difficulty is fine, especially in a game like Pokemon, but starving me for experience points is not a good way to go about it. Good God, Red is such a kick in the nuts. You will not be prepared for him the first time you fight him. I love the fight, but Jesus Christ, there's scaring the shit out of the player, and then there's just being a dick. And all this wouldn't be a problem if the trainers in Kanto didn't suck so much. Other than that, I don't really have that many negative things to say about Gen 2. It is a very well crafted game and addresses a lot of the problems I had with the battle mechanics from before. While the story is nothing special, I do like a lot of the characters and their personalities. In Gen 1, the only characters that were really all that memorable were Giovanni and your dick-headed rival. Hey, Claire may have been a pain in the ass, but I don't remember any of the gym leaders in the first game doing what she did. I love Silver as a rival, as I've already discussed, and for what it's worth, Team Rocket actually has a motive this time around, which is more than I can say for them in the last game. Pokemon has always been a story about a child that strives to be the very best, but I believe given the added subtext, Gen 2 is more of an enriching experience as far as narrative is concerned. I don't really have that much of a nostalgic connection with this game, and I can't say it's one of my favourites of all time. However, what I can say, whether you're playing Gold, Silver or Crystal, you are sure to be in for a great time all round. Before I forget, if you're playing Crystal, you have the privilege of having your Pokemon be animated. Somewhat. Not much, but it gives each Pokemon a splash of personality. The game soundtrack is also brilliant, though I think I like Gen 1 musically just that little bit more. I still can't get enough of the Goldenrod game corner. Surfing theme's pretty good too if I could actually listen to it all the way through without being interrupted by a random battle. Point is, Generation 2 of Pokemon is a fantastic game and I recommend you give it a shot, assuming that you can actually find a cartridge with a working save battery. In the meantime, why not play the remake instead? Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver were released in 2010 on the Nintendo DS. Like Fire Red and Leaf Green before it, the presentation has been improved and every Pokemon up to Gen 4 has been put into the game. Since this is a Gen 4 game, you also get the gameplay style found in Diamond, Pearl and Platinum. But I'll hold off on discussing the additions until the time is right. For now, I'm just going to talk about the exclusive content found in this version of the game only. Well, for starters, whichever Pokemon you have at the head of your team, they'll always follow you around, just like Pikachu in Pokemon Yellow. At first this may seem like a tiny insignificant detail until you take a step back and realise that the developers went out of their way to draw in-game sprites for all 400 plus Pokemon. Speaking of taking your Pokemon with you wherever you go, Heart Gold and Soul Silver originally came with this nifty little device called a Pokewalker. For every step you took, it would give your Pokemon 1 experience point. You could also catch rare Pokemon that could be transferred back to your game. I still have mine somewhere, not that it really matters being bound into a wheelchair. On the plus side though, it means I don't have to review Sonic Freeriders. See, there's a happy ending to everything. Besides, it just means I have more of an excuse to sit on my arse and play video games all day. One neat little feature I love about this game is the inclusion of the Game Boy player, as it allows you to listen to the original 8-bit soundtrack from way back when. Not that the remixes should be turned off, mind you. After the somewhat disappointing sounds of Gen 4, this game blows that game out of the water. Game Freak also restored various locations from Kanto, like Cerulean Cave, complete with a Mewtwo to face you at the end. Other legendaries include Zapdos, Moltres and Articuno. Yes, the legendary bird trio is back as well. Depending on which game you have, you can also catch some Gen 3 legendaries, like Latios and Latias. Latios and Latias roam free in the wild. Thankfully, you can keep track of all roaming legendaries on your Pokegear, so hunting them down shouldn't take you nearly as long. You also get Kyogre if you have Heart Gold, and Groudon if you're playing Soul Silver. There are also a few event Pokemon which are sadly inaccessible without an action replay or a Game Shark, though I would still recommend you do it just for the novelty. One of these Pokemon was Arceus, which would send you back in time if you brought it to the ruins of Alph. There you could choose to create one of the 3 mascot legendaries of Generation 4. If you plan on doing this, I would recommend you pick Giratina, as that's the only way you can get the Gariziasaur, since you can't trade it over from Platinum and it's the only way to access Giratina's origin form. This is one of the weirdest moments in any game I've ever played. We have actual photographs of real life locations while a magical goat tries to create a creature of mass destruction. I have no words to describe how I feel about this. There's also a not-geared Pichu that I couldn't really give a shit about, and perhaps most interestingly, a Celebi. Bringing the event Celebi to the Ilex Forest will result in you going back in time once again. This is where you discover why Silver has such disdain for Team Rocket. He's actually Giovanni's son, and after his father got his ass beat by Red, he went to train off all by himself. Fast forward a bit to the events of the radio tower takeover, and you yourself battle Giovanni after he senses something familiar about you. You curb stomp him, which gets him to realise that Team Rocket was always just an illusion. Crushed and defeated, the man leaves, never to be seen again. The final addition I want to talk about for today's video is the Pokeathlon. Remember those apricorns that you could use to make Pokeballs? Well, now they can also be used to make protein shakes for your Pokemon. Certain shakes will increase one stat but decrease another, so your Pokemon can't be an all-out powerhouse. Doing these events will yield some cool rewards like TMs and such, which would be great if only I was any good at them. The problem is that they're all touchscreen based, so trying to multitask in events like football is very difficult. Meanwhile, the CPU can control all 3 of their Pokemon at one time, so the chances of you winning are pretty slim. The Pokeathlon is nothing I'll lose sleep over. At best it can get you some good items, and at worst it's just a crappy collection of minigames. Bottom line, Heart Gold and Soul Silver are some really great games, superb remakes, and a great alternative for anyone that does want to shell out the cash to get the originals. Though saying that, at the time of recording, at least in Europe anyway, this game is getting pretty rare, so you might want to snag it quick. Next time guys, we'll be taking a look at my very first Pokemon game, Pokemon Generation 3, Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald.